we thought she had the flu. We thought that she was just running a little bit of a fever from the flu, just not feeling well, and kept her home the last couple days of September 2015, and she progressively got worse, and then we ended up in the hospital October 3rd, but she progressively got worse in a way that she was running a fever, and then it went into that the night we ended up rushing her to the emergency room. She started to get double vision, and she had been vomiting. Any kind of like migraine, any kind of loud sound or anything was really bothering her. She ended up just really, really sick. And we kept trying to give her fluids and trying to keep her hydrated. And I knew she was getting dehydrated, so by that night I told my husband, I said, we're gonna end up having to take her to the emergency room or take her to the hospital. She wound up having what we believed is a seizure. She had been getting sick, and her body stiffened up and her eyes rolled up in her head. And I threw my clothes on and got her in the car, and we rushed her to the emergency room.
You know, when I see the videos of her, and she's just a normal, and at that time, during that video, how old was she in the video?
11.
She was 11. She's just a normal 11-year-old, being silly, just a beautiful little girl. And then it was, what night did you take her to the hospital? Was that like what day of the week was that?
It was a Saturday.
You take her to the hospital on a Saturday, and then, I mean, that's it. I mean, she comes out a totally different kid.
Yeah. Took her to the hospital. When we got her there, she was non-responsive in the car. I ran into the hospital and told them that my daughter was in the car and that she was really sick. And at the time, I didn't know she wasn't responsive. I actually just thought that she had fallen asleep. The nurse came out to the car and did a thoracic move. He rubbed his knuckle on her chest a couple times, and she didn't respond. And he did it a couple more times, and she came to, and he got her to sit up. She was not real stable, so I kind of held her arm, and we managed to get her into the hospital room. They took her right away into a room. And nurses came in, doctor came in right away. It's kind of a bit of a blur because everything just happened so fast. They, just started taking vitals. It was like a rush scene. Next thing I know, they're taking her for a CT scan, and they sedated her and did a spinal tap. I sat there while they did the spinal tap, and they took like 5 vials and ended up sending those off. Honestly, what the doctor said after that, I really don't recall because I was in shock, I think. After that, I just remember them saying that they were going to be taking her by ambulance to Wolfson's because we were at Baptist South at the time. And so the ambulance came and took her to Wolfson's, and I don't really remember the drive from Baptist to Wolfson's. And then we were admitted into Wolfson's, and we were there a month and a half.
How long did it take for them to figure out and to diagnose what she had?
October 16th, she was diagnosed. I think through process of elimination, which this is pretty much, from my understanding, how this illness is discovered, is because there's no real test to check for this. So it's, they rule out everything that they could possibly rule out through blood work, MRI, EEGs. She had already had a CT scan, so they do all their blood work and everything, and just rule everything out. And then family history. So my husband has thyroiditis. My son has thyroiditis. They checked her TPO antibodies, and they were 500. And I believe that the normal range is 9 or below. Typically, you want to be around, 0.
Mm-hmm.
So her TPO antibodies were high, and between that family history, and then they had discovered that her brain was swelling, which is the encephalitis. That was where the diagnosis came from, of Hashimoto encephalopathy.
And when you heard that phrase, I know most people have never heard of it before, and you really dove right into a research state of mind to find out what you could find out. Well, actually, before I get to that, let me ask you this. So from the diagnosis, what did they tell you about Haley's specific condition related to this? Because I know that there's different cases for different people, but did they tell you that she would recover, that she'd be able to walk? I mean, what were the things that they told you?
When they told us what she had, they said that her recovery was anywhere from 2 to 25 years. And that was absolutely devastating, because I'm looking at a child in a hospital bed, and at the time she could not walk, she couldn't talk, she couldn't eat, she could not do anything. She was incontinent. She was like an infant. There were periods she was catatonic. She couldn't do anything, and she would just stare. It was just devastating. I mean, I can't even, you can't describe it. You just can't, because you're looking at your child and she's not there. She's not there.
And I know you guys had a very close relationship before, watching TV and movies and everything together.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to see her come back to you? When I got to see you guys on Monday and I see how she looks at you, like really, I mean, it really touched me, because she just has the sweetest little face, and I can just see I see absolutely the love in her face. So you really have. I mean, I know you've worked really hard, but she's come back to you.
She has. She wasn't talking for the longest time, and I remember I had to come home. I was with her. I never left her side 24/7. I lived in the hospital room with her, and my husband's like, "You really need to go home," and I had to come home to see my son, and I missed him so bad. So my husband stayed at the hospital with her, and I came home, and I was actually getting some things at the store, and my husband called me, and he goes, I want you to hear something. And I went out, was at my car putting stuff in the car, and he held the phone up to her, and she was saying, "Mom, Mom." And she said "Mom" like the whole entire night, and she had not spoken anything, but I left, and then she says "Mom." I just sat there and bawled, because we talk all the time. Her and I we are very, very close, always have been. And to not hear her has been very hard. And when she said my name, it was awesome. And then she didn't talk after that for probably another couple of months. So she's had to learn how to do everything all over again, how to learn to eat, talk. When she was in the hospital, she couldn't even see. She had double blurry vision. So she's come a really long way, and I'm grateful for where we are. I'm extremely grateful.
You've learned a lot about Hashimoto encephalopathy. I know you've learned a lot about this, and it's really surprising that, first of all, not a lot of people diagnosed.
Right.
Right? I mean, how many?
I'm not sure of the exact number of cases, but I think a lot of people are being misdiagnosed, especially as adults, and that's where it makes it, well, even children too, but I think adults have a harder time being diagnosed because in adults it presents sometimes as psychosis, and they end up in, you know, institutions, or, you know, being told that they need medication, that they're bipolar, different things like that. I think in our situation we were extremely lucky in the fact that, if you have to look at it like this, that my husband and my son have thyroiditis, and with her elevated TPO antibodies, we were able to come up with a diagnosis. We were one of the fortunate ones. We did go for a second opinion in Miami and stayed 4 days in the Miami Children's Hospital, and we were told while we were there by Dr. Bromberg that she's possibly 1 in maybe 5 in the U.S. with what she has, in particular because of she has cerebellar atrophy. So basically, the antibody has not been discovered yet because she has been checked for all 19 antibodies. She doesn't have any of the antibodies that are known. So it's an undiscovered antibody, and whatever that particular antibody is it attacked her brain. It attacked her cerebellum, which is all of your body function and everything. So, you know, even when she was aware of things that were going on in the hospital, she couldn't talk or she couldn't move. If she had an itch, she couldn't scratch it. If she wanted to say something, she couldn't use her words to say anything because all of that was affected.
It's been better than expected, and
it's hard to say because there's nothing to compare it to. You know, there's no right or wrong. There's no way to know. You know, I guess if there was somebody else like her, if there was somebody else similar to her situation, you could. But you know, everybody presents differently with this illness. I mean, there's some people it's frontal lobe, some people it's the back. This illness has such a varying degree, and everybody can have the same symptoms but react differently.
What would you say to parents and people in general about what they need to know, like about this, for impacting their own health and their own families?
You know, it's really hard to even pinpoint. You know, and the thing is, and the reason for me wanting to speak out is basically that I think our medical staff, the medical field, really needs to research this. You know, neurologists, rheumatologists, you know, these people really need to delve into the world of autoimmune encephalopathy or autoimmune encephalitis, because there are so many people that have this and go on for years having it and not knowing it. And I think being educated about it really makes a huge difference, you know, and like there's no one blood draw or one test that's going to show that you have this. So it really falls back on research and, you know, really studying and just being knowledgeable about what this is. And that is our medical field. Our medical field is what's going to help a lot of people that are out there and a lot of people that are suffering with it now.